All right. Happy evening, ladies and gents. Bicoastal Baseball episode number 6. Now, Dalton Brown. We are here on our 6th. Oh, actually, it's your 5th. It's my 6th. But it is our 6th Monday here on Bicoastal Baseball on the Grid Network. I'm Mike Guido. That's Dalton Brown. It is great to have you with us. We have plenty of stuff to go over today. Aaron Boone got ejected. Once, again, it seems to be kind of a trend for him. I'm sure we're going to touch on that later. But Dalton, how are you feeling, my friend? It's a big week for you personally. So how you feeling?
Yeah, I'm. I got a lot going on, man. Getting up and working East Coast hours this week while being on the West Coast. I've been getting up at about 4:30 to get to work. So,
Yep.
a little exhausted. A lot of wedding prep. For those of you who don't know, I'm getting married at the end of this week. So, a lot going on, man. But really, just a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be excited about, and a lot of good baseball too. So, excited to go through it with you.
Yeah. I think we touched on it a little bit last week before we got into anything. I think I lost about whatever it was, like 30 pounds in wedding stress weight. So I understand the exhaustion feeling. It really is a stressful time. It's a great time, but it's a stressful time nonetheless. So a little bit later today, 4-1-2-3 inning. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Are we really buying into the Mets success? Are we buying into the Guardians success? A little bit of contender, pretender, a little bit going on a little bit later. What are we learning right now about the NL Central? It's a tight division. It's an interesting division. We'll talk about that in about, I don't know, say a half hour or so. Listen, Dalton, this one shocks me. We'll touch on this probably a little bit further down the show, 35 or 40 minutes from now. Jackson Holliday has been, I don't know how you say, awful since he's come up to the big leagues. He's really, really struggled. So we'll touch on that. Maybe he needs a little bit more time in the minor leagues, depending on, what you make of that whole situation. We'll touch on that. Plus, stick around to the end of the show today. Dalton's Hot Corner will put some more money in your pocket. Okay, so catering to both of our fan bases, just like we always do at the beginning of every show. Yankees, Dodgers over there. So let's start out with the Yankee rant today. So I am, if you didn't see the promotional video that I had put out earlier today, promoting the podcast for this evening, I will enlighten you. I'm a little miffed from this afternoon. Yankees had like a 1:00 game on a Monday. Very, very odd that happens. But a 1:00 game on a Monday at home against the Oakland Athletics. They were shut out. It was 2-0. Listen, and I don't want to strictly focus on this game, but it is just like this game, I think, is a representation of what my issues are right now. Carlos Rodon was phenomenal all day, right? 7 innings, no earned runs, 1 hit. He was absolutely, it looked like Carlos Rodon, the $164 million pitcher that we signed a couple of years ago, everything that we signed up for. Yankee offense put up no runs and 3 hits. Anthony Volpe had a hit. Giancarlo Stanton had a hit. Jose Trevino had a hit. That is the second time that the Yankees have been shut out in the last 3 days. It is the 4th time the Yankees have been shut out this season. And I am genuinely beginning to worry that this Aaron Judge is the Aaron Judge that we will get all year. Okay. I don't know that lack of spring training at bats is an excuse anymore this late into April. He's hitting 183. He's only got 3 homers. His OPS is 674. That is nothing like what we've seen out of Aaron Judge in the past couple of years. So I didn't think that I would be here saying right now that, and I know that, listen, I know Aaron Boone got ejected and all that stuff. That didn't have any impact on the game, at least in my mind. But this is kind of a worrisome thing for me, Dalton. I didn't think that the issue would necessarily be them on the offensive side of the field. Now it's looking like that could be their biggest problem as opposed to what we thought with pitching. I don't want to panic, but from what we're seeing here, it's not looking too great in the offense department.
Yeah, so I get it, and 4 shutouts I think is emblematic of that offense's ability to be very boom or bust. You
Yeah.
know, there's a lot of swing and miss in that lineup, a lot of home run hitters in that lineup. I think you're going to see a lot of games out of them where they score 8 to 10 runs. You're also going to see some where they score 0 to 2. I think they're more prone to that than some other teams.
Yeah.
Over a course of 162, I think you trust that to play in their favor, and I think it will.
Mhm.
So to me, I mean, it's very similar. Like last Wednesday, the Dodgers played a day game at home against the Nats and lost 2-0 in a rookie making his major league debut. This kid Mitchell Parker, who by the way looks really good, but
He
he
does look
dominated
good,
the
yeah.
Astros yesterday too. But I think games like that just kind of happen in the course of 162. And I'm not telling you as a fan that you shouldn't react to it, right? That's why we're fans. One thing I will say, Aaron Judge, if you want to let me bet over 199.5 on his batting average for the season and over 699.5 on his OPS for the season, I will give you. I'll lay minus 200 odds on it, and I'll bet my salary on it. I don't think that this Aaron Judge is who we're going to see all year. I don't think that that's remotely within the realm of possibility.
Mhm.
It's really easy to forget. How many games are the Yankees into their season? 21, 22,
Yes. It's right.
right? I mean,
Remarkably early. It's
I,
23, yeah.
I was talking with a friend the other day who was worried about Freddie Freeman, who, came into, I think it was before Saturday's game. He came into Saturday's game batting 268. And my buddy's like, man, like it just, I'm not really like, is he just getting old now? Is this what's happening? And I'm like, you got to understand, 268 at this point in the season is 3 hits away from 304.
Yeah, right. It's
Like,
true.
we're talking about such small samples, and I don't mean to like throw cold water on the show in that way. Like our job is to react to this stuff and have some fun with it.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like, man, like you got to let these things play out a little bit,
Certainly.
And with
Yeah.
a guy like Judge, sure, it's not the start that he wants or fans want, and I get that, but there's no way this is who he is. There's just no way.
Yeah. No, I tend to lean towards the like this is not what we're gonna get. I am worried just because it is a stretch of I mean, it was just a day ago or so, or 2 days ago, where he went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. And it just looks like the approach is different. He's the past 2 seasons, he has been finally, because the first 4 or so years of his career, he absolutely could not lay off the slider down and away with 2 strikes. He just couldn't lay off that pitch. And the last 2 years where he's been at an MVP level, his approach has just been so different. And this year it just seems to be he's almost like reverting back. It's as if like he knows he's struggling and he's trying to just do everything he can to get himself back. Again, that's not totally irrational, but it does leave fans worrisome, including myself. So I'm a little,
Yeah.
you know,
I get it. I get the feeling, but he'll adjust. That's
I'm sure he will.
as a third party observer who doesn't have the emotional attachment to it. Like, I mean, I'll
Oh,
put it this way: if somebody wants to trade me Aaron Judge in fantasy for less than his preseason value, I'm taking it.
yeah, I'm sure. Aaron Judge at the moment is killing me in fantasy. I'm just going to say that. But
Give it time. Give it time. Um, yeah, to get into the Dodgers a little bit because I'm chomping at the bit, man. Um, look, it's been a little bit of a rough stretch for them. We've lost 4
yeah,
out of the last 5 series. 3-6, losing 3 straight series at home is not something the Dodgers do.
yeah,
I think it's been more than a decade since the Dodgers had lost 3 consecutive home series. So that's very uncharacteristic. That being said, like it's just not that big of a deal. And I know, like, I may sound like the guy that's just going to say it's April 22nd to everything, but
mhm,
like, I want to give people a little bit of context here. 2000. So right now the Dodgers are 13 and 11.
yeah,
Okay. 2023, the Dodgers started the season 11 and 11, finished 162. 2022, the Dodgers were 18 and 17, finished 106 and 56. 2019, the Dodgers started 9 and 8, finished 106 and 56. 2017, the Dodgers started the season 10 and 12, finished 104 and 58.
right.
Like, I get it. It's not fun to watch a swoon like that in April, especially when it's the Nationals and the Mets coming in and winning series from you, and the team just kind of looks out of sorts. It's not comfortable, but like this is why you play 162. Like you're gonna have weeks like that and 2 week periods like that.
Ebbs and flows, right?
Um, I'll say this, like the hitting with runners in scoring position is not something I worry about. Like that's one of those things that just evens out with time. Generally speaking, if a team's not hitting well with runners in scoring position, that's a team I want to bet on. Like
Right.
there are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, that's a play on team because it means that they're undervalued in the market. I feel that way a little bit about the Dodgers right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be touching on something related to that in the hot corner later on. As far as where the team's issues are, I mean, we just gotta throw strikes, man. Like, twice on that homestand, we walked more than 10 batters in a game. Like that shouldn't happen more than once a season. I think we've got some young pitchers that are, adjusting to throwing more innings and sometimes look a little bit deer in the headlights. I think over the course of the season, we're going to see reinforcements show up in the form of Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, like Trinan eventually out of the bullpen, like Brusdar Graterol. Hopefully we see him midsummer. So I think some of the pitching issues will kind of solve themselves with time and with guys just making adjustments. So I'm not worried. The offense looks great. They'll hit with runners in scoring position over time. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. So it hasn't been fun to watch, but let's take a deep breath. That's my message on the Dodgers.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, the Dodgers as a whole for the past week might not have been fun to watch, but Mookie Betts over the course of the season has been very, very fun to watch. That dude is destroying baseballs right now.
The top four in the lineup, I mean, Betts, Ohtani, Will Smith, all three of them are batting over 350. Freddie Freeman's in the high 200s, but last two games for him, 4 for 8, 5 RBIs between Saturday and Sunday. Like clearly he's kind of starting to find it again too. And
yeah, right.
I mean, are we really worried about Freddie Freeman finding it? Like it's kind of like Aaron Judge in a way. It's like, no, like that guy's too good. Like he will find it. But it honestly, man, like there's still a ton of fun. I was out at Dodger Stadium the last 2 days, and Saturday's game was kind of a kick in the ass. But you walk 10 batters, you deserve to lose. And then Sunday, I got to watch Tyler Glasnow, go eight shutout innings with 10 Ks. Team wins 10-0. I mean, that was fun.
He is taking being a Dodger in stride, dude. That he is dealing to start the year.
Yeah,
really dealing.
LA kid, grew up a huge Dodger fan. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, so. It's really fun stuff. And again, it's part of that Mets success in Los Angeles over the this past week that we're talking about the Mets in the 1-2-3 coming up in a couple of minutes. Whether or not we buy it or not, I'm sure that our buddy Alfred Parser Jr. would probably be interested to hear something about that. But all right, so let's get into our first score update of the day. Obviously, the Yankees and the A's wrapped up this afternoon. The A's took a 2-0 win. Zach Geloff ended up hitting that home run, a 2-run shot off Victor Gonzalez in the 9th inning. Absolutely snapped my heart in two. And especially because Victor Gonzalez has been absolutely phenomenal for the Yankees pretty much this entire season so far. Even got a save the other night. Phillies and Reds in the bottom of the 7th at the moment, 4-0. Philly right now, it's in Cincinnati. They have a lead, 4-0 in the bottom of the 7th. Brewers and Pirates right now knotted up at 1 in the bottom of the 6th. The Tigers have a 6-0 lead on the road in Tampa in the bottom of the 6th, taking on the Rays. Braves and Marlins right now still nothing here in the bottom of the 4th. The Twins and White Sox are just about getting started. Twins with a 2-0 lead over Chicago in Minnesota in the top of the 3rd. Nothing so far with Toronto and Kansas City in the top of the 3rd. And the Diamondbacks are out to a 2-0 early lead over the Cardinals in St. Louis, heading into the bottom of the 2nd. So that's our first score update of the day. The Padres and Rockies are going to kick off later in Colorado. That's at 8:40 p.m. Eastern. 9:38 p.m. Eastern. We have the Orioles and the Angels kicking off in Los Angeles, and the Mets headed up the coast a little bit, take on the San Francisco Giants at 9:45. So we'll touch on those scores in a little bit. So let's head into the 1-2-3 inning. And this was very, very interesting because as we've seen it, right? And I'm going to let you touch on this first, Dalton, because you had a closer look on this series than I did. But the Mets go into Los Angeles, have some success against the Dodgers. Obviously, the Dodgers came out of that series feeling at least somewhat decent after their 10-0 win in Glasnow's start. But this was a fairly successful stretch right now for the Mets. They took 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers. They swept the Pittsburgh Pirates, who have been fairly hot to start the year. 2 out of 3 from Kansas City, who has been pretty hot to start the year. It was a 4-game series. One of the games got postponed. They took 2 out of 3 in Atlanta to start the year. So this is a Mets team right now that is, I mean, at the moment, it looks like they're kind of firing on all cylinders. I mean, what do you take away from this? Are you kind of buying into their success? Is this sustainable? What do you make of the New York Mets at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of people were, myself included, were probably a little too down on the Mets preseason.
Mm-hmm.
When you actually get a chance to take a look at that roster in person, it's serviceable. I mean, Lindor and Alonso are producing, right? McNeil hasn't been great, but like, man, Marte was awesome in that Dodgers series. Nimmo walks almost every at bat, it feels like. Obviously losing Alvarez for them hurts. They lost game Friday night in LA. But it's a pretty deep team offensively. Like, they're not great, but they're solid. And I think they're a team that's good enough that they can make a run at a wild card. Now, they're not going to win that division or compete in that division. I don't know how much noise they can really make if they make it into the playoffs. But I think it's not outlandish to think that this could be an 85, 87 win team if things break their way. And so far, things are breaking their way. Like Severino with a 2.14 ERA so far, I didn't see that coming. Quintana
After
has
really rough starts to start the year too. Severino did not start the year well.
Right. And then Quintana has looked good. Now, I will say, if you take a look at Quintana's baseball savant page, like, that regression monster is going to eat him alive. It might happen tonight. Bet the over in Mets Giants tonight if you can, still at 7.5. But I think Quintana, the regression monster, is coming. But the Minaya signing was great. Jose Butto the other night looked great against the Dodgers. Adrian Hauser is what he is. He got lit up, but he's a 5-starter. That's all they really are asking him to be. So I think that, like, there are some pieces, like, they're a little bit, they fall into kind of like that Diamondbacks, Padres, like that second 2.5 to 3 tier in the NL, where it's like they're a competitive team, right? Maybe right there with the Reds. So my take on the Mets is they're better than I thought. Are they like a real contender? No, but they're better than I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the reasonable takeaway here, is that they very easily could be better than what people thought. I mean, I'll go back to the PECOTA projections that we had to begin the year. I mean, PECOTA was projecting them at 83 and 79. I mean, they were projecting them to be 8 wins better than what they were last year. And I was even, you and I think both said this. We were both like, that's pretty generous. Like, we really didn't think that they were, that they should have been valued that highly. But I guess shows what we know to a sense. But here's the thing that I know about the Mets, because again, I live with Met fans. My entire family, I shouldn't say my entire family. I have a bunch of family members that are Met fans. I have, like, I don't know why they would do that to themselves, but they are. But this is what the Mets do, right? And I know that this kind of sounds like such a casual take, but the Mets are the ultimate, like, 1 month hot, 1 month cold team, and they are every single year, regardless of what their roster looks like. That's just what they are, right? There's going to be a point. I'm telling you right now, there's a real chance that the Mets going into June are going to be maybe a game or 2 out of first place. Like, they're going to be at the top of the division, around the top of the division, once the summer hits. And then in June or in July, they're going to go 5-20 in 1 month. Like, that's just how the Mets work. I'm being dead serious. Like, Met fans they're not even upset that I'm saying this, because they know that it's true, because it happens every single year. And the expectations for the Mets were so low to begin the year, even amongst Mets fans, that I think they're even surprised at how they're starting right now. Because again, it's not even like they're beating up on, like they're beating up on the Nationals and the Rockies and the White Sox and like the super duper bottom of the barrel teams. I mean, the Pirates have had a pretty good start. The Dodgers are really good. The Braves are really good. Like, these are good teams that they're actually beating. I never really doubted their ability to put up runs, right? Especially after this, since they signed JD Martinez, and he hasn't been included in the lineup yet, but especially since they signed JD Martinez, I was like, this is a lineup that I think can score runs pretty consistently, right? Now, I had a little bit of skepticism when it came to Pete Alonso. I think his batting average needed to go up, but even with the production that he inherently gives you just from a power bat, I mean, that's a producing lineup. The big thing really, um, is that, you know, I think I'm kind of in the same spot as you. I didn't expect their pitching to be this good, especially. I mean, even without Kodai Senga, like they're getting really quality starts out of Quintana, out of Sean Manaea, out of Luis Severino, out of like you said, Buto. Like who the hell? Like it's just
Butto. Yeah.
yeah, but right, Butto. But that's what I'm saying. It's like they're just. This is what the Mets do. They look great early on in the year. They look like they're going to set the world on fire, and they don't even really look like they're going to set the world on fire, but they're playing well. I'm telling you, come July, it's going to be like 5-20, and then they're going to fall behind the Nationals in the division, and I'm going to have to deal with a ton of screaming Met fans on Long Island. That's just the way it is. That's how they are, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mets fans have already heard me say this once on the show, and I'll probably say it a couple more times. Mets fans are some of my least favorite because when things are going well, they will act as if they are rooting for the unquestioned best team in baseball. And then the moment things start going poorly, it's you need to feel bad for me because I'm a Mets fan. And I don't have a lot of like tolerance for like fans playing both sides of that at the same time. And that's the kind of fans Mets fans have, or the kind of fans Met fans are. So I look forward to the downturn. I know it'll happen. But I think that team I think they have upside to be like a little bit over 500, maybe if things break their way.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, I think 500-ish is a realistic expectation. You know, I want to talk about the Cleveland Guardians too. You mentioned them as a team that's also overperforming right now. And like, I just think we need to have an honest conversation about scheduling in baseball, right?
Yeah, right.
This is a team that's already played the Oakland A's 7 times and won 6 of them.
Wow.
This is a team that's already played the White Sox 3 times. They got 4 with Boston. Boston's nothing super special, right? Like they've had some pretty easy series out of the gate. Now, have they outperformed expectations despite that? Sure, right? I mean, it's incredibly impressive that they're 16-6. I didn't think they would be, but as a betting man, this is where I start to look for opportunities to buy or sell a team as the season goes along. And this team's probably number 1 on my list in terms of teams that I want to sell right now. They're about to go through a stretch where they host Boston, then they're going to go to Atlanta and Houston back to back. Not a bad time to sell them this week. I have a feeling that they've got some losses coming down the pike in the next 10 days. The better spot to sell them might even be in 2 weeks because after that they get the Angels, Tigers, and White Sox again. So, look, that's the advantage of playing in the AL Central. But I think over time, as this team has to face some more of the meat of their schedule, I think they're going to get exposed a bit. You know, they're probably better than I thought, but like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm simply not buying the Guardians even now.
Well, hey, I mean, listen, you were super skeptical on Cleveland even to begin the year, right? Like you even said, I mean, I think the words were, if I'm not mistaken, I think the words were quote unquote, this team is ass. I think you said.
I still kind of think they're ass. I mean, we'll see. I mean, so far they're not ass, right?
They're not ass, right?
So far, but I still think they might be ass. So we'll see.
They might have even gotten more ass since Shane Bieber went down, which I think was actually kind of tragic. He put a really good first start, and then went down. But hey, listen, I think that it's definitely, you have to give respect to some of the guys in their lineup that are just having great starts to the year, right? Steven Kwan is hitting 360, right? Like regardless of who you're playing, 360 is 360. You know what I mean? I just think that, as far as that's concerned, you got to give him that. Josh Naylor has also had a really, really good start to the year. Now, like I said, I think I fall in more in line with you that I don't know that this is sustainable. However, you have to kind of keep this in mind too. This is a division that I think you and I both kind of agreed that was very in flux. This was a division that could, you know, like it could be very, very weak as far as a long-term sample size is concerned. Obviously the Twins are struggling at the moment, but it really depends on how you feel about Kansas City and Detroit, whether or not their success is sustainable going forward. They both have decent young teams, but listen, one of the things that I think the Guardians do that is, I guess it's fairly impressive as far as I'm concerned, is that they do seem to have a way with young pitching. They really
Oh,
do.
totally. Yeah.
Like they really find a way to bring out guys. I mean, they're tied for second in the league with batting average against. They're second in the majors with runs allowed, second in the majors in hits allowed, fourth in team ERA. They have just over a 3 ERA. Now, again, the point that you brought up earlier is that, like, yeah, the teams they're playing for the most part at the beginning of the year are not strong, but these are also guys that are like nobodies on the mound, right? Like we're talking about like Tanner Bybee, Tristan McKenzie. Like I just am, Tristan McKenzie, I shouldn't say is a nobody, but you know what I mean? It's like there's
Yeah,
not like
I mean,
super duper guys here.
yeah, I mean, look, I think Tanner Bybee is pretty good. Tristan McKenzie, when he's healthy, is excellent. Um, I will say McKenzie is fascinating right now because he's pitching with a torn UCL. And he's elected to, instead of getting Tommy John, he tried to just aggressively rest it, claims he's pitching pain free, but the velocity's not really there. And so far, he's kind of found a way to be successful even without the velocity being there. But if there's a pitcher on thin ice right now from like an injury perspective, it's probably him. I'm hoping that he can stay healthy and see some success. He's been
Yeah.
really vulnerable in some of his interviews about it, which has been cool to see. But he's a fascinating guy this year in general for them.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, um, what do you think is the over under on the day that Emmanuel Clase gets traded?
Well, right now you got to take the over, right? I mean, at this point, I think
Probably.
it'll be close to the deadline. But gosh, I mean that's a piece I'd love for the Dodgers to go get, given the way our bullpen's been looking.
I
But
think that's a piece that
we'll,
everybody would love to get their hands on. Any
yeah,
contender, really.
yeah, we'll leave that conversation for July. But I do think it's a conversation we'll be having. By the way, just like kind of a small bonus here, you can get the Guardians over under on wins right now at ESPN Bet at 86.5. I would hit that under. I think that it gives you, this team can go 10 games over 500 and you're still cashing an under on the Cleveland Guardians. That sounds like an overreaction to me.
Yeah, that actually does seem fairly obvious. All right, so let's go to the second out here. What have we learned about the NL Central? So let's just take a peek here at where the NL Central stands. The Milwaukee Brewers, I think I said it last week, right? Like they're just kind of turning into the Rays. Like they win for no reason. It's kind of annoying at this point. But the Rays right now sit in first place, 14-6. The Cubs 13-9. I think a lot of people really were predicting that the Cubs would end up winning this division, again, super duper early on. Cincinnati at 12-9. The Pirates right now fall to fourth. They've fallen to 500 at 11-11. And the Cardinals, listen, yeah, it's early, but it's looking pretty good on your front here, Dalton. The Cardinals right now 9-13 to start the year. So this is just an interesting division overall. What are really you taking away from this? Is there any sort of long-term success that any of these teams can really see? Like what are you learning about this division at the moment?
So I think the Cardinals are exactly who we thought they were, or who I thought they were.
Who you thought they were?
They can't pitch, and their lineup is good but not great. The Pirates are, they had a fun start. They did that last year too.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
it's a team that's getting better, but they're nowhere near contenders. We talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
Um, I think the Brewers are fascinating to me because it's hard to imagine that pitching staff holding up.
yeah,
Some of the guys they're leaning on, like Colin Ray, DL Hall. DL Hall's a young guy with some potential. They got him in the Burns trade. Joe Ross. It just feels like they're kind of cruising for a bruising on the pitching side, and not having Devin Williams in the pen is a problem. But they're finding a way, and a lot of the reason they're finding a way is because their offense. Hoskins has looked great for them. Churio has looked, I think better than the other two 20-year-olds that are up there in the league right now.
yeah. Right.
Turang has been great. The big story for me with the Brewers is William Contreras. This guy, to me, is the best offensive catcher in baseball, I think, pretty definitively so far this season. You look at his baseball savant page, batting run value 99th percentile, average exit velocity is 95.8. That means his average ball, the average ball of his bat qualifies as a hard hit ball. That's not something you see very often from anybody in the majors, let alone a catcher. 99th percentile there. He's 100th percentile in hard hit percentage. 64% of the balls off his bat this year have been hard hit. So this has just been a ridiculous offensive player for them. It's been fun to watch him kind of blossom into this. And I will say, the defense and the base running, like neither one of them are particularly inspiring. But if he's going to come out here, and put up the type of numbers he's been putting up, where you're talking about a guy OPSing 965, like,
Yeah,
I mean, that's a special player.
yeah.
So,
It's crazy. It's
and
crazy.
Yelich having a little bit of a resurgence too. So I am believing in the Brewers as being pretty good. I think it's going to come down to them or the Cubs, though. I think the Cubs will give them a run for it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You bring up a good point about catchers, just in general, right? Because obviously William Contreras, what he's doing to begin the year is unbelievable. 354 is what I'm seeing right now as his average. He's hitting around 350. OPS is almost 1,000. He's hitting at about 987. What I'm seeing as far as OPS, I like it's obviously there. He's a phenomenal guy. He hits at the top of their order. Um, just a really, really phenomenal player. And it's a lot of their guys, too. Like you said, Bryce Terang, Willie Adames is having a great year. Sal Frelick has actually started out pretty well. The power has been there for Jackson Churio. And honestly, let's give a little bit of respect to Christian Yelich. I know he went down a little bit, but through 11 games, he was fairly solid for a while. This is just like it's interesting because you bring up a point about like, okay, a base running. I don't think you can really expect much from any catcher for the most part, right? But defensively, like I think you and I would kind of agree that defense from a catching perspective is, I don't know, it's got to be at least as important as any other position on the field, right? Like at the very, very least.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely, and that's why what you hear me say is best offensive catcher, because if the defense isn't there, it really matters, right? Like you can't hide behind the plate.
yeah,
And I think if you look around the National League, that's where Will Smith would have an argument for best catcher in the league overall. I think the offense right now is probably leans toward Contreras, but you look at Will Smith, 94th percentile caught stealing above average. He just threw two more runners out yesterday. He's been phenomenal behind the plate so far this year. That's been a big point of emphasis for him. And obviously Will Smith himself so far this season, I think he's batting in the 350s. I think 346. So not far off. The OPS for him 853 hasn't been quite as much slug or as much on base, but I think that's the one knock on Contreras, and it's a knock that matters. You're right.
Yeah. Well, it definitely matters. But that was the question that I was actually going to ask you. I was actually going to pose it as a question: is how much does it matter, right? Because everything that we heard about, because listen, I obviously a Yankee fan. I heard the same thing about Gary Sanchez, and then the bat fell off, and then you were just like, all right, well, you can't defend this guy either way. But when Gary Sanchez was hitting, people were still complaining about, well, he's just such a poor defensive catcher, despite the cannon that he has. But he's not a great defensive catcher. That was really the question I was going to pose: is how much can you live with offense if defense is poor? Like what needs to be kind of the balancing act there between an offensive and a defensive catcher in that sense?
I mean, I think catching is one of the only positions on the field that like you can roster and start a catcher just based on his defense.
Yeah.
There's not really another position on the field that a good team's willing to do that with.
Right.
And so I think that speaks for itself. Now, if you're a good enough hitter, they'll put you on the field. Period. That's the case at every position. But catching is the only position that the same is true for defense. So I think bad defensive catchers, if they can hit, turn into DHs eventually.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well,
I
hey,
think that's the result you end up with.
yeah, you're definitely not wrong there. Okay, so you brought up Will Smith, you brought up William Contreras. What about all the people that are going to tell you, hey, Dalton, what about Adley Rutschman? Are you forgetting somebody? What do you make about that?
So you'll notice I said National League.
Okay.
For that reason. That
Okay.
being said, I mean, you know, I haven't seen the sample size yet from Rutschman that I've seen from Will Smith. So right now, I probably give Will Smith the nod if you're going with just like who has the more impressive resume.
Mhm.
But if it's like who do I want to build my franchise around, it's going to be Rutschman. I mean, he's got the age. He looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
So um, if you give me any catcher in baseball to build my franchise around, I'm picking Adley Rutschman easily.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's coming from you as a Dodger fan too, because Will Smith's pretty damn good. Even compared to Rutschman, he's pretty damn good.
He's great, and we signed him for 10 years, and I'm thrilled about it. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, it is kind of interesting how this division is playing out. You're right about the Cardinals. I'll give you that. I must have been, who knows? I guess I guess I know nothing about baseball. What do you know? Let's move over to Jackson Holliday here, because this is really an interesting story. Let's go to the third out. Jackson Holliday, like I said in the open, has been, I don't know how you say, like I said, awful to begin the year. He is at the moment 1 for 30 to begin his career. 033, his OPS is 127. I think any other stat beyond that is probably doing too much. Actually, I'll throw this out there too. He has 16 strikeouts in those 30 at bats. He has walked twice. So it just has not been good for Jackson Holliday. Now, on the other hand, and this is really where this debate comes in, is that Jackson Holliday has pretty much dominated every minor league level that he's been at, and that's why he's here so early. But let's pose the question anyway, Dalton Brown. Due to his really rough start to his career, does Jackson Holliday need more time before he genuinely gets set in to a major league lineup?
Yes and no. I mean, I think like the reality is that it can take time to adjust to the major league level. You'd like to see it not look like this.
Yeah.
I feel for the kid because he was like the center of the baseball world today. He got called up, and we're talking one hit in 30 at bats. More than half of his bats he's striking out. That's tough, right? And the pressure mounts in that situation.
Yeah.
The nice thing for him is the Orioles are full of Jackson Holidays, right? And that's not to say that he's not a special player, but you look around that field between Westberg, Kauser, Henderson, like it's a team full of guys who are kind of in the process of breaking out and are young guys that they know they're going to kind of build around. So luckily, like they don't need him to be great yet. I think he will figure it out. What I don't think they should do is like send him right down to the minors again. Like to me, show the kid some trust, right? Like show him like, hey, you can go 1 for 30 and we still believe in you. The stakes are not that high yet, right? Like if he gets to like 4 for 90, okay, we probably have to have a conversation, right? But 30 at bats is nothing, man. Like
really
it's
small.
nothing. And so, it's unfortunate because it's a national story and it's something we have to talk about. But I think you just got to keep running them out there. have his teammates reinforce that confidence with him, and I think it'll come around.
Yeah, I here's the thing. I don't think that they should send him down just for the simple fact that like like I said, he's conquered every level. Like what if you bring him, because I agree with you. I think you need to trust the kid, right? You need to actually show real faith in the kid that says, okay, listen, we know that your transition has not been great, but we're going to keep giving you at bats. We're going to keep waiting until you figure it out. And we think that you'll be just fine. I agree that they should definitely have faith there. But even if it weren't for that, I just don't think what this is kind of the point in his career at the moment where I'm like, okay, now it's time to show that you're a real big leaguer, right? Like, I just don't see the real benefit of sending him down at any point, right? Like, the guy's conquered every level he's been at, right? He's single A, 326. A plus, he's got what OPS of 940, double A OPS of 928, triple A OPS of 899, right? Like he's raking at every single minor league level. So what I would assume would be, okay, if you send him down, he's going to go rake at triple A again. And then, okay, then you bring him back up thinking he's ready, not facing major league pitching, not facing real major league arms. And I think that that's kind of a stalemate. I mean, even if it were that reason, do you agree that like sending him down doesn't really do much for him at this point anyway, despite the young age? He's already kind of crushed AAA.
Yeah, I mean, I somewhat agree. I think really like the argument for sending him down would be let's get his confidence back up, right? Like let's like it's like let's have him see the ball go through the hoop, right? Like let's have him
Right.
go score a few balls up and get his confidence back. But
Yes, correct.
I think so far, like the assumption that his confidence is shot is probably not a good one. Like it's been like what 8 days,
Yeah, sure.
so like I just don't think that we're at the point of having that conversation yet. But I
Right.
can understand, like what I do understand is if we get to the point where it's been a month and a half and he looks overmatched, yeah, then like at that point you probably want to send him down,
Mhm.
let him kind of get recalibrated into mashing baseballs, and then you call him back up after a little while, right? And I
Right.
think that
Yeah.
he seems like a pretty mature kid. He seems like the kind of kid you can have that conversation with and say, "Listen, like we still believe in you 100%, but let's give this a little bit more time, right? Let's get your swing back. Let's call you back up. You're going to be back here. Don't worry, right?" Um, I just don't think that they're near that point yet, but I do think there does come a point where that becomes the right decision.
Hmm. Yeah, and listen, I think you made a good point of, he would at some point if the struggles continue down the line, he's just going to need to see the ball go through the hoop again, right? Like he's just going to need to see some success that says, "Oh yeah, you know what? I actually am still pretty good at this. Let's just see if
Yeah,
I can,
yeah,
you know, translate it to a big league level." You're right. That is a legitimate reason to send him down. But again, from a developmental perspective of all right, he just needs to get more reps down in a level that he's already conquered. I don't really see that that's a plus for the sake of that reason. Um,
I agree.
but you're also right. I mean, this is a team that, you know, they don't need him to be, they don't even need him to be good. Like, they can afford him absolutely sucking at the beginning of his career.
Yeah, they don't need him to exist. It's great for them that he exists, but they don't need him to exist.
That's exactly right. Okay. So, all right, that does it for the 1-2-3 inning. Let's give you another score update at this point. The Phillies and Reds have gone final. It was a 7-0 Philly win over Cincinnati in Cincinnati.
Man, Ranger Suarez, by the
Ranger
way,
Suarez.
dude. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to view him as like this kind of like, yeah, well, I don't know. 4-0 with a 1.36. He's a legit Cy Young contender. No real way
Yeah.
around it.
Is he better at this point? And this I'm asking for your opinion. Is he better than Aaron Nola at this point?
Oh yeah,
I
But
just mean
I'm
overall. I don't mean like just in this small sample size and a handful of starts. I mean, like, are you getting the feeling that Ranger Suarez is the number 2 and Aaron Nola is the number 3?
oh yeah, I mean I felt that way probably before the season.
Oh wow.
But that's more a reflection of how I feel about Aaron Nola. I think Aaron Nola is a guy who like slowly his stuff has kind of been declining. There's a little bit of Shane Bieber to it, where it's like the pitchability is through the roof, but the stuff is kind of declining, and at a certain point, like you're going to start to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like Shane Bieber, I'm not trying to harp on a guy who's hurt, but he's the kind of guy that like for the last couple of years he keeps putting up good numbers, but all of the like savant stats and whatnot tell you
Yeah.
that like, this could come crashing down. But like we've seen this from Suarez before, like 2021, he put up a 1.36, 2022, 3.65. Like pitching in that ballpark, that's phenomenal. Last year, 418, just okay, but it was fewer starts down to 22. But
It's great.
no, I mean, I think
Season,
this is a legitimate good pitcher.
Yeah.
Like this is a dude. And the Phillies need a dude. You know what? And you know what? Spencer Turnbull looks like a dude for them too. We'll see. It also helps that the Phillies just played the Rockies and White Sox last week, so maybe we need pump brakes. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, listen, Ranger Suarez in Cincinnati today. The Reds are not a bad team, right?
No.
The Reds have some really nice young
And
talent.
that's a tough ballpark to pitch in on the road too.
That's right. 7 innings, 2 hits.
Yeah.
No runs. Ranger Suarez mowed down. Mowed down the Reds. The Reds were held to just 2 hits. Christian Encarnacion Strand and Stuart Fairchild were the only ones to find success against Ranger Suarez today. So Hunter Green also went 7 innings today, gave up 4 runs, but Hunter Green gave the Reds some length earlier today. The Brewers and Pirates, 4-1 Pittsburgh in the top of the 8th. The Rays finally put up a run. It's 7-1 in the bottom of the 8th.
They've
by way of the Tigers.
The Rays finally got Tariq Skubal out of the game. I mean, you talk about another guy who's a legitimate, up and coming ace, Skubal with the Tigers. And by the way, speaking of up and coming aces, Pirates, man, this kid Jones for them,
Jared Jones,
Jared Jones, holy cow, man! Like this guy is like Spencer Strider nasty, but he's in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
but like
six innings and earned run, 4 hits today, 7 Ks against Milwaukee today.
This is for real. Like last 3 starts, 7 Ks, 7 Ks, 8 Ks, and that's at Philly, at the Mets versus Milwaukee. Like those aren't bad. Those are not bad offenses.
No.
Even before then, 6 innings, 2 runs against Baltimore with 7 Ks. Like 10 strikeouts in his first start and just 5 2/3. Like, this kid's a dude and he throws hard. Like if you haven't had a chance to watch him yet, watch him. Yeah. Watch him. He's nasty.
Yeah, he is fun to watch. I'll tell you that. So like I said, Pirates up 4-1 on the Brewers. Tigers up 7-1 heading into the 9th against Tampa Bay. The Braves are out to a 3-0 lead. That is good for me in the survivor pool. Let's go. 3-0 Braves right now over the Marlins in the bottom of the 6th. Bryce Elder, 6 scoreless innings right now for the Atlanta Braves. It'd be really something if they could get great innings out of him, given Strider's injury. The Minnesota Twins, the bats are coming alive. Granted, against the White Sox, but it's 6-0 Twins heading into the 5th against the White Sox. Toronto up on the Royals, 3-0 in Kansas City heading into the 6th. Diamondbacks still 2-0 top of the 5th against St. Louis. And the Padres and Rockies just kicking off into the bottom of the 1st, still scoreless. So that's another score update for you. We'll give you another one before we leave today. I want to touch on this, Dalton, before we get into everything else, because I have a feeling this could be a fairly fiery topic between you and I, and who doesn't love that. As Aaron Boone today got ejected in the 1st inning, again, led the league in ejections last year as a manager. He's a fairly fiery guy. Now, the home plate umpire, Hunter Wendelstedt, the way that this kind of played out was Aaron Boone was chirping at him. Hunter Wendelstedt then turns over to the Yankee dugout and says, shut up. I'm doing my job. If I hear one more thing out of you, then you're gone. Aaron Boone kind of gives him the thumbs up. Now, there's video evidence of all of this, right? I guess it looked like it was a fan from behind the Yankee dugout was then continuing to heckle Hunter Wendelstedt. And about 10 seconds later, Wendelstedt turns over and ejects Aaron Boone out of the game. And Aaron Boone immediately goes, well, hey, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. What are you throwing me out for? So Hunter Wendelstedt had this to say after the game. He said, Aaron Boone is the manager of the New York Yankees and is responsible for everything that happens in that dugout. I don't want to eject the ball player. We need to keep them in the game. That's what the fans pay to see. Aaron Boone runs the Yankees. He got ejected. And I'm sure that there was more to that quote than that. I'm pulling that from Brian Hoke, the Yankee beat writer. But Dalton, listen, I think I have a fairly unique point of view on this because I've been umpiring for 15 years, right? So I am an umpire sympathizer more than most, right? But I want to get your take on this first.
Well, look, my issue, like I think part of where you're going to go with this is that Aaron Boone can act like a fiery idiot hothead, and you think that that's probably maybe something that hurts the Yankees. That's like maybe where I'm guessing you're going to go.
No, actually not at all.
Okay. Well, so here's where I go with this. Like this whole thing post game. Well, Aaron Judge is responsible for the Yankees. Sure, he's not responsible for their fans. He is not.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Period. So this idea that Aaron Judge being held or Aaron Judge that Aaron Boone being held responsible for something that's being said by a fan behind the dugout is completely absurd. The problem I have with all of it is that, like, there's very clear video evidence. Like, you can tell if, like, the game's televised, right? Like, you can tell that it was the fan that was causing the ejection. To me, the umpire then, because the other quote you didn't read that Brian Hoke tweeted out is, the umpire doubled down. He goes, I heard something come from the far end of the dugout.
Far end of the dugout, correct.
Had nothing to do with his area, but he's the manager of the Yankees, so he's the one that had to go. Look, my issue with this is what Hunter Wendelstedt is telling me is, I don't know who deserved to be ejected, so I ejected the manager. Mm-hmm. If you don't know who deserves to be ejected, you shouldn't be ejecting anybody.
Yeah.
You should either figure out who needs to be ejected and eject them, or don't eject anybody, period. Yeah. Like, if you're going to talk about, I think it was coming from the other end of the dugout, well, then turn your head and look and figure out who's yelling at you and eject them if you think it's coming from the other end of the dugout.
Right.
Truthfully, I think he's full of shit. He didn't think it was coming from the other end of the dugout. He thought it was Aaron Boone. He didn't look to verify that, and he threw him out of the game, and that's wrong. One batter into the game. How much of a stink could Aaron Boone have really been making one batter into the game? And he tosses him out of the game, and you can tell on video Aaron Boone's not saying a word.
Yeah.
So, look, like at the end of the day, it cannot be too much to ask of an umpire to turn and figure out who's yelling at you before you make an ejection.
Yeah.
Because you might be saying, I ejected a coach, not a player, because the fans want to see the player. Yeah, but ejecting a manager can still matter, right? Like,
sure.
That's what the manager's paid to do. He's paid to be there and manage the ball game, and he's sitting there behaving. Like, I get why Aaron Boone was pissed. I'd be pissed too. Yeah. Like, it's bullshit. That shouldn't happen for an umpire. Like, turn and figure out who's yelling at you. If that's too much to ask, then go find another job.
So it's interesting that you bring that up because you're right. He's absolutely responsible for everybody in the dugout, and he's not responsible for the fans. That's goes without saying. The interesting part about this is that I agree with you. I think Hunter Wendelstedt is kind of full of shit, and I think that he ejected Aaron Boone prematurely. And I think that because here's the thing about umpires, right? If you are getting chirped at all game, and Hunter Wendelstedt's been doing this for 27 years at the major league level, right? Like, he's been an umpire for a long, long, long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't care how much thick skin you have. If people have been telling you, if you have a stadiums full of 50 plus thousand people and all of these professional baseball players and managers and coaches and everything like that telling you suck for 27 years, it takes a toll on a man. I'm just going to say that. So
Sure.
it does not surprise me when some umpires have maybe too short of a leash on certain days, right?
Sure.
I think in reality, the entire stigma, right, of, and again, in this certain situation, I don't necessarily think that Hunter Wendelstedt did the right thing of ejecting Aaron Boone. I thought that was a little premature. But the issue that I have is that I feel like we're kind of growing into a stigma in Major League Baseball of any time an umpire shows any bit of emotion towards a player, it is now a power trip on the umpire. Like I don't get that, right? Like the
Oh, I
player and
do.
the coach can what's that?
I do. I think that's the right opinion to have.
I I don't think so. I don't think that it's right for you to act like if the player and the coach are allowed to act like an ass, then I think the umpire is allowed to be an ass back to you. Like I don't think that the umpire position is this all professional job of like you can't act a certain way because you're an umpire. I think you can act in a certain way towards players and towards coaches if that's how they're acting towards you. That's
Okay.
my old position on this whole thing.
So two things about that, right? Number
Mhm.
one, are you under the impression that like players can act like asses toward umpires and it doesn't get punished?
No, of
That
course, absolutely not. You're right.
okay, right? So there are consequences to that. So let's not think there aren't. First of all,
No, you're right. There are, but I'm saying, but through the public eye, right? Because I'm not necessarily talking about rules on the field. What I'm talking about really is how it is viewed amongst the public. Is that if a player shows some sort of emotion towards an umpire, and an umpire shows emotion towards him back, and it gets him thrown out of the game, it then becomes this stigma of, man, these umpires really need to be held accountable. I just don't buy that. I
so
don't
I
buy it.
do, and the reason I do is the player is making the money he's making because of his ability to play baseball.
Sure.
Um, if he goes outside of that ability and acts like an asshole, he'll get kicked off the field.
Correct.
I don't think there's any problem with any of that, right?
You're right.
As an umpire, what you are getting paid to do is to be level headed. That is your entire job description. That is central to your job description, is to be level headed and not let your emotions affect how you are interacting with the game. That is your chief job. That is your number one job. Like dealing with players being angry is part of that. So to me, like it is central to the job description of an umpire to be level headed and to not react to people
Mhm.
around you not being level headed. Like that's the job. So in that sense, like we're yeah, sure. I'm not saying that like umpires don't ever have reason to react to a player, but to me, whether you have reason or not, you're getting paid not to react to that player.
Mhm.
And guess what? Guess what you have at your disposal? That finger that you can throw them out of the game with, right?
Right.
Like player can't throw you out of the game, you can throw them out of the game. As a result of that, as a result of having that leverage, your job is to stay level headed. That's just how I view it. To me,
Yeah.
and look, one thing I will say, people on social media like to be really extreme about things, right? Like
Sure.
there were fans responding to the Yankee beat writer saying things like, "Well, that should be the last game he ever works." Please,
Right, yeah. Come on.
like, look, he had like Wendell said, had a moment where he reacted to something too quickly and threw a manager out of the game. Like, realistically,
Right.
what he should probably do is be like, "Hey, my bad. I reacted poorly in the moment. Whatever," and you move on. It's not that big of a deal. Like this whole, "Oh, he needs to be disciplined. He needs to be fired." No, like guys make mistakes at work. It's life. Like
Correct.
we all make mistakes at work. So
Yeah.
I
Right.
will say that, but I do think the umpires have a responsibility to be above it with a lot of this stuff.
Well, listen. That's fair. That's fair. I kind of fall under the line of like, okay, it, you because you're right. Part of your job is to deal with players that are being emotional, right? Like that's part of the job description. I also think that as long as the game is being called fairly, I don't know that how you act as an umpire matters all that much. Like, I just don't, right? It there comes a point, obviously, and just like everything in life, there's a line, right? As long as you're not ejecting everybody, like you're trigger happy with ejecting guys, and you're not ejecting nobody, there's a fair line to say, okay, like, okay, like there's a line with everything. But as long as the game's being called fairly, I don't really know that I care about anything else. I like that's it. You know what I
That's
mean?
fine. You don't have to care about more than that, right? But
Yeah.
their job description is more than that. So that's how I look at it.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to this because this is another interesting thing. So the San Francisco Giants, we were live on the air when this broke. When they signed Blake Snell, it was a 2-year, $62 million contract. And let's just say this, Dalton, in 3 starts, it has not gone well for Blake Snell with the Giants. 0-3. His ERA is 11.5, 11 and 2/3 innings pitched, 12 Ks. He's given up 15 earned runs, 18 hits, 2 homers in 3 starts. Just not great for Blake Snell, right? And this isn't something that we need to talk extensively on, but for the NL Cy Young winner, I'm sure that this is not what the Giants signed up for. What do you make of that whole scenario? And should teams like the Yankees be happy they didn't sign him?
Blake Snell has done this before.
Yes.
Like where he goes through these stretches, especially early in the season, where he just kind of looks a mess.
Yeah.
So like I don't know. I mean, it's you like this is again one of these scenarios where like we're dealing with such a small sample that like what I start looking at is I'm like, is the fastball losing its edge? Well, not
Yeah.
really, right? I mean, last year he was 95.3 with his 4-seamer. This year he's 90 or no, excuse me, last year's 95.5. This year he's 95.3. So like to me, the stuff is still the same. But last year hitters hit 255 off his fastball. This year they're hitting 381. Like that's not sustainable. You know what I mean? Like part of this is, the contact that's being made against him is just resulting in tough results right now. And I know that sounds like kind of a cop out answer, but I think it's the reality of it. Like this is what 3 starts can look like.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not encouraging, but he's still 75th percentile in whiff percentage. Most of his baseball savant stats through 3 starts are actually closer to like middle of the road than they are to bad. I think he'll be fine. But Blake Snell kind of can walk. He can kind of walk the line, right? Because sometimes he just loses the zone, and if you lose the zone and you're constantly pitching behind in counts, then you have to groove him some of the time, right? So Blake Snell's he's always gonna have stretches like this. He's also gonna have stretches where he's absolutely dominant. He's never gonna be horribly efficient. But I think this is kind of just one of those things that you have to live with. Now, look, if you and I are having this conversation again in 2 weeks and he's made 4 more starts and it still looks like this, then I'm like, but 3 starts in, I like, there's a little bit of a light on, but it's not flashing. It's not like a blaring alarm. It's a little bit of like, whoa, this doesn't look good.
Something to look out for. Right. It's something to track for the rest of the year. I agree with you. This is kind of who Blake Snell is, right? I mean, this is it. I mean, even last year, let's just give you a look here. These were his numbers last year as the NL Cy Young winner, right? 2.25 ERA, 32 starts, 234 Ks. He led the majors in walks, 99 walks. But again, I think everybody kind of figured that when you're signing Blake Snell, that's what you're getting. You're getting a guy that has, more chase stuff than power through you in the zone stuff.
Yeah, but Mike, he also went 0-3 with a 5.30 in April last year.
Right.
Like gave up 5 homers in 18 innings last April. Like this is just kind of something that happens with him. And then he went 1-2 and like he didn't really put it together until June. Like,
Yeah. No, that's exactly where I was going. Is like if
yeah,
you look at last year of what Blake Snell was, it was a tale of two halves, really, right? The first half of the season, Blake Snell was terrible. He was terrible. And then the last half of the year, his ERA was like 1
yeah.
through 4 months. Like he was absolutely dominant for the rest of the season. So that's just kind of who Blake Snell is as a player. Okay. So what do we have? What do we have anything else here? I'm not sure that we do. You like any series this coming week, Dalton? Is there a series this coming week that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so there was one other thing that I think we wanted to touch on briefly,
Mm.
and I kind of just want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
There's a real chance, and I know a week ago to 2 weeks ago we said, let's not overreact, right? But
Oh,
Astros just lost 2 out of 3 in DC. The pitching is still looking like a mess.
yeah,
This is a team that's now 7-16, right? And
yeah.
again, 3 games, right? I am, you'll hear me say it a million times on this podcast. You can't overreact to small samples in baseball. But they're going to Wrigley now against a pretty decent Cubs team. Like that schedule's kind of staying tough for a minute here. And then they go to Colorado, which is not a good team, but it's a frustrating ballpark to play in at times, especially if you have one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball like they do. So,
Right.
there's a chance that this slide continues for them. Bregman last year of his deal, like they have guys they might sell. I mean, what do you think the chances are at this point that they're sellers by the deadline?
um, I don't know that they sell. I don't know that they sell. You brought up a good point pre-show, and you've brought it up in weeks past too. This is a farm system that is exhausted, right? They have nothing in the farm at the moment. But I also don't know what there is to trade without just kind of throwing your hands up and tearing the entire thing down, right? Like, because Alex Bregman, I think you and I could probably both agree that that's probably the first piece that you look at. Moderate age, right? He's probably, like I don't know. The best days of his career are probably behind him, but outside of that, like what do you dump here? I mean, just looking at the roster here, right? Like you could dump Verlander. Okay, I don't know that you get much back for Verlander. I know that you had mentioned pre-show that maybe you just give up on some of these starting pitchers. I mean, would you really want to do, because Framber Valdez and Christian Javier are legit starting pitchers. I don't know that you get anything because the rest of these guys are young. Hunter Brown, JP France, whoever else. These are young guys. I'm not sure you really want to dump them. Obviously, I don't think you can trade Altuve, but like I just don't know what the pieces are to give without just saying, you know what, trade Alvarez, trade Tucker, let's just totally restock and start over. Like if they're gonna sell, I would see them kind of either saying Bregman and nothing else or complete teardown, which leads me to believe I'm not sure that they sell.
So I think what selling would look like for the Astros if it were to
Yes.
happen. Bregman's the obvious candidate. You're right.
Correct.
I think if Verlander is pitching well and the team is not good, you could probably get a prospect for him from a team that needs a starter, right? Like
Sure.
if Atlanta down the stretch looks up and goes, man, like we need a dude to replace Strider, right? Like maybe you squeeze a good prospect out of Atlanta for Verlander. I could see something like that happening. I think the kind of sneaky area is like, could a Ryan Presley get dealt out of that bullpen?
Ooh, maybe. Yeah.
Could they try to capitalize on Ronel Blanco and say, hey, like let's bet against this guy being a stud and try to sell high? Maybe a Chas McCormick moves. Like, you're not going to move Altuve, Tucker, Alvarez, right? You're not going to move those guys,
Right.
even
Right.
But I think there are some pieces that could move. And to me, if you're trading away 2 or 3 guys, like that's selling. Like that's realistically what selling looks like.
Yeah.
I don't think selling for them would mean dropping themselves out of contention in future years either. But like they got to do something as far as like getting this farm system back to like having a pulse.
Right.
And I think that would kind of help them do it while still maintaining the core of that offense. And we know this is a team that can develop players. So like if they can get a couple dudes in there, I'll put it this way. I think the Astros are facing a reckoning pretty soon. And I think the sell point for them might be earlier in the season than we're thinking.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah. So this is an interesting comment here, coming from the Grid Network. Very interesting. Our own guys are tuning into our show. He says, no, Dusty makes a huge difference in culture, shows how much you need and value a great manager. Do you think that that's kind of playing a part in this? That they go from Dusty Baker to Joe Espada? Do you think that is that really a thing that could be impacting things?
Um, I mean, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what I would point to.
Right. I
Um,
agree.
I think realistically, this is a team that's starting to age a little bit. I think like Jose Abreu is just not a playable major leaguer anymore. Um, but other than that, the offense is still really good. To me, it's just the pitching, right? Like the injuries to the pitching, they're not a team that could sustain that.
Their bullpen
Um,
is struggling
and like,
mightily.
look, there's a reason the smartest GMs in baseball don't usually sign relievers to long-term deals. They just don't
Yeah.
do it.
Right.
And it's because of what you're seeing with Josh Hader, right? Like this can happen to relievers. Like when you're pitching one inning samples all the time, like sometimes things just go wrong in a hurry.
Yeah.
Presley's getting old. A break like the bullpen there is kind of getting old, and we're seeing the regression back and forth that can happen with bullpens. So to me, it's an issue totally with the pitching. So it's a very much a one-sided issue.
Yeah.
I don't really put it on the manager yet. I mean, I do think like you can start to ask that question if we get like to the end of May or the end of June, and it's like, ugh, and you start to hear grumbles coming out of the team. But I think the issue is a little bit further up right now with them. I think part of the problem is that they haven't like since Lunau left, and it's been this like Bagwell, Biggio pulling the puppet strings with Dana Brown in the front office. Like it's kind of not, we're seeing that like, hey, a team going away from analytics hurts. That's kind of a little bit of what I think is going on there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's definitely that definitely could be a part in it. And listen, I watched, and this was, I mean, it's damn near a month ago now, but like I watched the Yankees walk into Houston and sweep the Astros, and I just saw firsthand that bullpen. They cannot, and it's their top end guys too. It's Presley, it's Abreu, it's not just the middle of the bullpen guys. They can't get anybody out. Like they're at a point now where like, and I think I said this to you last week. They're at a point now where they need their starters to give them 6 or 7 a night, because they can't have Framber Valdez go 5 innings, have him completely worked on pitch count, and then you need to rely on an extra 4 innings from your bullpen. They don't have 4 innings in their bullpen. They just don't have it. So
yeah. No, and look, part of it too, they have some promising young pitchers that are just not pitching the way you expect.
JP
Right?
France is getting shelled almost every
JP
night
and
now.
Hunter Brown, right? Hunter Brown's a guy that Astros fans have been really excited about. And look, with Hunter Brown, he still misses a lot of barrels, but a lot of the kind of leading indicator stats with him are just as bad as it looks, which is
Right.
really tough, right? Like the expected ERA is 12th percentile. Average exit velocity, he's getting drilled, right? He's not getting anybody to chase. Even the swing and miss is down in the 32nd percentile. So, like,
Right.
he's walking a ton of batters. 12.9% walk percent's way high. Like, this is just not a guy who's like he's not the same pitcher that he was when he first came up, and he looked awesome, and he kind of looked like a baby Verlander. He's just not looking like that guy, and that's kind of a dude they were betting on. So, and again, you wonder like what's leading to him being down a full mile an hour on average year over year. I don't know.
Right.
Like he's a little young for that, so I don't know. It's tough to say.
Yep. It's an interesting bit. So hold on. So let's touch on this before we get into the hot corner. There a series you're looking forward to? I'll pose that question again.
I think next weekend Dodgers Blue Jays should be fun. That's one that kind of immediately comes to mind.
Yeah.
As far as midweek this week, the fun potential is definitely there with Phillies Reds, especially those two offenses in that ballpark. Like that could be could lead to some pretty high scoring baseball. Um, looking again at the weekend, Yankees Brewers is a pretty fun one, especially the Yankees going into Milwaukee. Should
Yeah.
be a decent number of Yankee fans, but those will be fun crowds in Milwaukee. Two teams that have played just really damn good baseball so far. So I'd say probably Yankees Brewers more than any is the series that sticks out to me. But I'd say Dodgers Blue Jays is right there too as one that should be a lot of fun from Toronto.
Yeah, Dodgers Blue Jays. That's those are the two finalists for Ohtani at the end of the year. If you want to call the Blue Jays a finalist, do you think the Blue Jays were actually in it, or is the Dodger hat just completely on and saying that it was the Dodgers the whole time?
Listen, you have known me long enough to know that I was telling you a year and a half ago that it was the Dodgers and it was
That
never.
it's true. Yep.
So
I think most people agreed that like they just were preparing for Ohtani to happen.
the entire organizational strategy was with the assumption that Ohtani was walking through that door. So,
Yeah.
um, and they stepped up and did what needed to do to make that happen, which I'm happy about because otherwise I would have been blowing a gasket. But yeah, no, I never really had too many worries about that. Hot corner.
Yeah. Dalton's hot corner, putting more money in your pocket. What do you have?
Yeah. I made a sizable bet preseason before the Dodgers signed Ohtani on Dodgers over 93.5 wins. That number never made sense, right? That number was, for some reason, assuming that the Dodgers weren't going to do anything to adjust the players who were leaving. And so I just smashed that, right? Preseason, the number ended up closing a 104.5, which is crazy, right? I wouldn't suggest betting over a number like that. That's crazy. But now we're back down into the 90s. In at ESPN bet, you can get Dodgers over 99.5 wins. 13-11 start, it's a bit like,
wow.
I don't think you're going to get a better spot to buy low on the Dodgers than right now. And I want to touch on the things I mentioned earlier in the show, right? The last 4 seasons that they started kind of like this, 2023, they started 11-11, finished with 100 wins. 2022, 18-17, finished with 106 wins. 2019, 9-8, finished with 106 wins. 2017, 10-12, finished with 104 wins. Like, this team is a dominant regular season force that, like any other team, will go through moments where they're not. I'm just like, what? I don't know why you'd really move the number much when they're kind of just doing what they do a lot of times in April.
Yeah.
Like, a 13-11 month doesn't even go noticed if it's August and you're already 30 games over, right? Like, they're going to go on a rampage at some point, and this number is going to all of a sudden be 104.5 again, and you're going to be thanking me that I told you to bet it when it was 99.5. Like, sometimes you just got to buy the dip on teams, or you got to just figure out that a team is overvalued. Like, I got the Marlins a couple days ago at under 70.5, and I would have given that out on the show if it was still available, but they took it down. You got to kind of read the tea leaves with these teams, So that's one of the. I mean, is it though? Like, they've won 100 games, 5 of the last 6 years? Like,
yeah,
yes. And 4, and 4 of those years they looked exactly like this, if not worse, through 20 some odd games. Like, sure. I don't think it's actually bold at all. I think it's just saying, like, hey, this thing that we keep seeing happen over and over and over again, I think it's going to happen again, and this might be the best, if not second best, of those rosters. So, like, yeah, I don't think it's bold at all.
Well, okay. You bring up a lot of really good points, and I don't even know that I disagree with you. I think that just from my perspective, I don't know that I have the balls to make that bet. Just because, like, betting on it, just this simple notion of betting on a team to win 100 games is a lot, right? Like, it's realistic when it comes to the Dodgers, but 100 games is 100 games. That's a lot. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I would have the cojones to pull the trigger on that. But
yeah,
that's also me being me.
The last time the Dodgers played a full season and didn't win 100 games was 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we go back 2017, they won 104. 2018, they won 92. 2019, they won 106. 2020, if you pour that out over a full season, we're talking 115 or 120. They went, 43 and 17.
Right.
Make of that what you will, right? But 2021, 106. 2022, 111. And 2023, 100. Like, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about a team that's basically done this 5 years in a row and 6 of the last 7.
Yeah.
And, like, is this Dodger team demonstrably worse than all those other Dodger teams? It's going to be hard to make that argument.
It is hard to make that argument. But you also brought up the Guardians earlier in the show. You gave them like a bonus bet earlier in the show, Dalton.
Yeah, the Guardians can go 10 games over 500, and I can cash an under on their win total. I mean, come on.
That seems pretty obvious to me as well. I don't know that I buy an 87 win Cleveland Guardian team.
Yeah, come on.
But all right. That does it for us. Dalton, any closing words before we sign off?
I'm looking forward to a really big week in my life. I have a lot to be grateful for. Unfortunately, I might watch a little bit less baseball than usual. By the way, next Monday, you and I got to talk about what we're going to do, whether we're going to bump the show a day or what, because I will be in the sky flying to Cincinnati during next Monday night, and I would like to do the show next week with you if possible. So we'll talk through that. But no, otherwise, grateful to be doing this. It's a ton of fun. Thanks for indulging me with it and doing it with me too. And looking forward to more ball.
My first appearance will be made at the trusted Atlanta Braves ballpark next weekend. I am going to Atlanta for Saturday and Sunday, seeing the Braves play the Guardians. The pitching matchup is not posted yet. I am disappointed in that, but I'm interested in that series as well. I think that could be a pretty interesting series. But
I've made a few visits to that ballpark, so I can give you some advice on lay of the land and how to go about it if you're into it. Shoot me a text.
Sounds great. All right. That does it for us. As for Dalton Brown, I'm Mike Guido. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network, exclusively on the Grid Network. We will see you next week at some point, but we'll see you next week.
Go Dodgers.